Lake Lewis does a great job. Good follow on Twitter. USA Today covers the Redskins, also PFW, a Writers Association as well, and covers the NBA. Kind enough to join us on a Wednesday. How you been, pal?
Hey, what's going on, Q? How are you?
I'm doing well. Good to talk to you again. All right, let's kind of put a final bow on the Super Bowl. How impressed were you with the Philadelphia Eagles, the play calling of Doug, and the performance by one Nick Foles?
Very impressed. Doesn't surprise me. I mean, we talked about it over the past few weeks that they still were a team that was, just being overlooked. And I've said this, and they proved it, that they weren't just a one-trick pony. I mean, they weren't just Carson Wentz. They were a complete team that 53 guys have bought in, and you saw that all year long. I mean, they only lost 2 games all year, and that's just as impressive as winning the Super Bowl. I mean, 2 losses all year for that team that lost 9 games last year. That's impressive, and they deserve their championship trophy.
Yeah, I mean, the last game of the season against Dallas, you're right, you kind of cross it off. But yeah, exactly. Right. You just cross it off. And they, listen, you're right. I mean, Foles goes out. He outperforms Matt Ryan. He outperforms Keenum. Their defense did the rest. And then in the Super Bowl, on that stage, he matched Brady. Whether you want to argue semantics if he outplayed, he matched him. He matched one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time.
He did. And they didn't – this wasn't the type of game where, for Foles – they needed him to manage the game. No, they needed him to perform and make plays, and he did. He made plays. I mean, he made big plays. One of the biggest plays in Super Bowl history will be remembered, the touchdown pass that he caught, So
right.
I just thought that Doug Peterson and his staff, I mean, they put together a really good game plan. And, I talked with Phil, and he was just saying, I asked him, I said, what happened defensively? Because you guys couldn't stop Brady. And he said that he thought one of the big things was when Brandon Cooks went out, that it totally changed what they were preparing for, and they hadn't really prepared a whole lot for Hogan. And Hogan had a huge game against them, naturally, he said. And then when Grom, he said, so a lot of things happened that kind of, put them in a little bit of a tailspin. And he said himself, but what can you say about the offense? They couldn't stop the offense either. So I thought it was a really good game, too, by the way.
I thought it was an entertaining game. I wouldn't call it the greatest Super Bowl of all time, but I think for entertainment value, I mean, look, for the Eagles fans, obviously their first Super Bowl win, they'll put it up there as, it was the greatest. Of course, because they're celebrating, and rightfully so. You're talking from a fan standpoint. Now I guess the question is, the conversation's been, well, what are the Eagles going to do with Nick Foles? Well, they don't have to do anything because he's under contract. I was saying before, I saw that Peter King said, if anything, they would be looking for 2 first-rounders. And I don't know if he misspoke. It was misconstrued. There's no way I can fathom a team calling up the Eagles and saying, we'll give you 2 first-rounders for Nick Foles. And if the Eagles don't do that, then that's horrible if they don't.
Well, I think like you said, I don't think he meant that. Literally. I think that, I'm not speaking for Peter, but I will say that, if you're the Eagles, you have a hot commodity now. You have a guy that maybe you can get some stuff for that you wouldn't have had before. But I also think the Eagles also know that they have a quarterback who is coming off a major knee surgery, who may not be ready come September, whatever the first day of the game is. And you do have a proven backup who just won the Super Bowl for your team. So 2 is better than 1, especially when 1 might be half right now. So I just think for them that, you listen to any takers and see what you can get. But if it's not a first or, something of value, then, you have yourself your quarterback who can, play until Wentz is ready to perform.
Real quick on Wentz, I know he's come out a couple times, even after the injury, and he said his game, his style of play is not going to change. And if you look at that one play, it just so happened that he got sandwiched between a linebacker and a defensive end as he was diving for the goal line. So,
right.
If you're an Eagles fan, listen, you're still in the afterglow of winning the Super Bowl. You're not worried about it in February. But come September, I mean, I would have to pull him to the side a little bit. And I guess it's tough to tell a player to change his game. It's almost like telling a fighter when they're always aggressive and they come forward to all of a sudden now lay back and play some defense. I understand that, but that I think that would concern me a little bit.
Well, I think obviously you're talking to a guy that covered the same type of scenario.
RG3,
when RG3 got hurt, and he was more of a reckless guy as his rookie year. And I'm not saying Carson's reckless or even Robert for that matter. I just mean their style of play, the physicality of it. They used to absorb hits. And that's what made them so special, was that they could make, the game outside the pocket. They could get out and do some things. But Robert probably should have tailored it down just a little bit, scaled it down, because he did take an enormous amount of hits. And I think with Carson, I mean, he's a pocket quarterback. Don't get me wrong. He's a mobile pocket quarterback. So it's not like he's out trying to run first. But I think that he will have to scale it down a little bit, just because now he has proof of why he needs to. I mean, look how he got hurt. But I don't think it's necessarily the type of play where, I mean, that was a fluke play.
It was a fluke play, no doubt.
So I don't think it's a play that he needs to reevaluate his type of game. No, he got hurt being a competitor, and I'd rather have my guy get hurt being a competitor than get hurt hiding in the pocket.
Yeah, but you'd also want him running out on a design bootleg, not that they would, and all of a sudden lowering his shoulder into a linebacker or defensive back, right?
No, but you know what, Q? I'm sure Doug Peterson and those guys are going to tell him over and over, look, get down, fight for another day. I mean, all these things are going to be things now that the young quarterback will be aware of. But if you think that Carson Wentz isn't going to be even more hungry,
I agree.
Back on the field after what he saw happen in his place, think again.
You know what? It's funny you brought that up. I said, if anything, because they might have to scale him back, right? Save him from himself. Because a lot of times, if you have that competitive fire in you, and I said this, he's probably ecstatic, obviously, for the team himself and for Nick, because they're that close and they're good guys. But there's got to be some competitiveness, that fire burning inside, where he's like, man, I know this guy's not taking my job, but I don't want this guy to take my job. It's just the competitiveness in people.
Sure. I mean, like I told someone the other day, the ring that he gets, it's not going to shine as bright to him. It's still a Super Bowl ring, and he was part of that Super Bowl. But he saw another guy step in his place and lead his team to the promised land. So clearly, if you're a competitor, you want to be the guy on the stage, MVP trophy. You want to be the guy that takes the knee to win the Super Bowl. And he wasn't. So clearly he knows that it's his team, and everyone in Philadelphia knows it's his team. Everyone in the NFL knows it's his team. There's no quarterback competition or anything like that. Nick Foles knows that too. But it's just like if you saw your team win a championship and you weren't necessarily part of that at the end,
it would drive me crazy.
There's going to be a hole there. There's a void there that he needs to fill by being a competitor. And that guy's one of the toughest kids, one of the ultimate competitors we've seen in a long time.
No doubt. Again, speaking of some of the quarterbacks, a couple minutes with Lake Lewis joining us on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline on this Wednesday. You saw the money that Garoppolo got Jimmy G, which is ridiculous. Before I got off and finished out the 12 o'clock hour, we were talking about the next potential quarterbacks in line. Listen, I think if guys like Breeze, Ryan, and Rodgers are smart, they wait and see what happens with Kirk Cousins. And by the way, let me say this too. You know what? I was thinking about this because I never brought this up with you, and I'm curious. When you tag him, not you per se, when the Redskins decide, let's just tag him twice, they in essence basically back themselves in a corner. I mean, you agree to that, right? They gave him
100%. When we knew here, and, I've been on your show all year saying Kirk Cousins is not coming back to the Redskins. When you tag a guy twice, you're either doing that to build up your team around someone, and that guy's going to be around. So you can it's kind of like you can do some things around him, put the pieces of the puzzle together. But they did this out of fear because they weren't sure what the guy could offer them. And it was a bad look on the Redskins' part. Let's just call it like it is. Am I the biggest Kirk Cousins guy in this town? No, I'm not. I don't think he's worth $30 million. I have no problem saying that. I think the Redskins did themselves a tremendous favor this go-around by not putting a third tag on him. And they've got a very good quarterback coming in here, and Alex Smith, really good quarterback. So I don't have any problem with that. The problem that I've always had a problem with was they could have had this whole situation rectified 2 years ago. And because they put the tag on Kirk Cousins, they basically pigeonholed themselves and put themselves in a bad situation and they needed to do something to come out of that so that they could get something in this and not have a Pro Bowl quarterback walk. And they bring in another Pro Bowl quarterback. We'll see how this all works out. But, yeah, I agree with you wholeheartedly that this was the Redskins' problem from a management standpoint.
It's kind of a wait and see where the other dominoes fall regarding Minnesota, potentially what Jacksonville does with their quarterback situation, Miami to see where Cousins, at least the flirtation with a couple of these teams. Let's switch gears a little bit to the NBA. All right, let me ask you this. I guess people had a serious problem with Steve Kerr handing the reins over to the players the other night. And again, I'll get your thoughts. I said this. Here's a guy that, aside from, I guess you'd have to go back, what was it? When Walton took over and they had that great run. You're talking about the last 2 out of 3 years, 2 out of 4 years, NBA champs, Western Conference champs, NBA champs. Most likely they're getting back to the finals. If he wants to sit on the bench with an iced tea and sunglasses and smoke a cigar, who cares? I mean, honestly, I just don't know. To me, it wasn't a lack of disrespect. I think it was just kind of letting the guys know, it's your team, I'm here for you, but you guys ultimately, you're the ones that are going to decide the wins and losses, and he entrusted the players more.
Yeah, I mean...
You have a problem with it?
As a former player, I don't. I don't have a problem with a coach. If he's making a mockery of us because we were playing terrible, that's different. But if it's in a situation where it's just more lighthearted, I mean, we've seen worse. The problem I have with this situation, though, is that this adds more fuel to the fire of Kerr naysayers who say that, Mike Brown and you name them, who's been on that bench as assistant coaches,
can run the show.
That team, Walton, that they can run the show because the team is just so good. That didn't do him any favors.
So let me cut you off real quick though. You bring up a really interesting point. It's almost like the Patriot and the plug and play theory, right? Brady goes down, whether it's Jacoby, whether it's Castle, we can still win, right? Because it's Belichick's system, and ultimately you have the players.
Right.
Yeah, it's an interesting point. I didn't have a problem with it.
Look at it, but look at it. I mean, they won the game. Was it like by
46? 46.
Yeah. Okay. So. I'm sorry, if you had a problem when he was coaching the team and they were beating your tail, do something about it. So this was more of 46 points, man. At that point, it's all fun and games for the backups anyway. So let guys have fun. I mean, we know this is the greatest team assembled in all of professional sports right now, period. So it's just more of a lighthearted moment. I mean, fans that are jumping on this, there's nothing else to talk about, I guess. That's what we're talking about.
I agree, because I just don't see a team beating them in a 7-game series, or at least coming out of the Western Conference. I just don't. The way the makeup is there. And I got killed last year when I said write them in for another run. Now you look at...
No, you can write them in next year, too.
Well, yeah. Yeah, I mean... They're not going anywhere.
That's my first love sport. That's what I played my whole life. Let me tell you right now. Nobody's beating Golden State. You may get a team that can win one. If you're Houston, you might be able to steal two. And I still not win, steal two. Nobody is beating Golden State. When the playoffs come and they hit that switch, it's over.
How about the Eastern Conference? Now, you think all of a sudden because the Cavs have won 4 in a row and LeBron, who's basically the GM, the head coach, you name it, and the owner, he decides he's unhappy. Let's get a cultural change. Now they won 4 in a row. I still don't think all is well in Cleveland. I just don't. I just don't think this is the same. Obviously, it's not the same makeup. I think LeBron is still logging a ton of minutes. And man, I'll tell you, they are missing Kyrie. I mean, but
they're better. And when
are they though? Defensively,
I argued with a friend of mine. And he was like, "Come on, man, they're going to take us. They're going to be a 5 seed now." And I said, "No, they should elevate to a 3rd seed." I just think Toronto and Boston are just too into their systems with their players. I mean, Cleveland's. You have to keep in mind this is all fairly new to them, and when they play, tougher opponents, you may see some holes here or there. But I just think they instantly, overnight, became more athletic. And that's been the biggest problem with this team, currently constructed, or up until this point. They just were slow and old. And now that, you have Clarkson, you have Nance, you have some young guys.
Rodney Hood,
Hood that can score. And these young guys make your bench better, and it makes your rotations different. So now you don't have to have the same exact rotations. That was the problem with Cleveland, is that they didn't have a lot of diversity in their sets. So now you can do that. You can move Nance to 5 at times. I mean, now you can play Thompson more down low. And we're talking about them doing this without Love. So I do think that this puts Cleveland right back in the thick of things to come out of the East. It doesn't matter who comes out of the East. I don't even care if it's Boston. They're going to get beat by Golden State in 6 minimum. It's just.
Are you that high on Golden State, or just not as high on the Eastern Conference?
I'm just that high on Golden State, and I mean that all throughout the playoffs.
But it doesn't even seem like Golden State
game last year.
Yeah, but Lake, it doesn't even seem like Golden State is really. They haven't had that Golden State like year, right?
They haven't, because they don't need to. Listen, you got to think. What are they shooting for now? That franchise already has the best regular season record in history. That franchise has 2 NBA championships. Should have had a third.
They want to get. They want to get They want to get back to back in a three-peat. They want to put themselves in line with what we saw in the 50s and the 60s and the 70s, and then with the Pistons and the Bulls and those all-time great teams.
Right. So think about it. The goal is get through the regular season without a major injury. That's what it is. They're not trying to have the best record again. They've already done that. They don't need to beat their own record. I mean, I know some fans out there may say, well, wouldn't you want to? Not necessarily, because they put a lot into that year to not win the championship, by the way. That was the year they lost it.
Right.
So I think this year the goal is to just, of course, the goal is to just get to the playoffs with your core players healthy. They don't have any major injuries if you think about it. And when the playoffs start, watch what happens. They're going to hit a switch, and it's a switch that a lot of teams just aren't. They're incapable of doing it. We saw San Antonio do this a couple of years in their runs, where they didn't look like they were invincible anymore, and bam, as soon as the playoffs started, they were smothering teams out there, and that's what's going to happen with Golden State.
Yeah, it just seems like inevitable again. They're on this just collision course, whether
Sounds
it's
like
Boston.
You don't like it. Sounds like you hate that.
No, listen, I was the one, and last year I argued with Josh that I said it's a foregone conclusion. They're probably going to win 3, 4, 5 more. I mean, I was very adamant. No. Listen, if you are great, I respect that. I guess I'm still a little salty that Durant figured if I can't beat him, join him. Because I had this feeling that, you know what I'm saying? Like, but I'm not going to take away what they did. I know it's been going on for years. I know. No, but hold on a second. To be fair, yeah, but he's also, to be fair though, come on now. He's the one that tweeted out, basically calling out guys for doing it, and then he turns around and he does it.
I mean, and he gave up less money to do it, so he clearly did that. I just think that's unfortunately when all these guys want to play with each other, and Q, it's a big difference from when we were younger, and the big reason for that is, when we were younger, I remember being from D.C., when we would play teams from other areas, like other states or whatever, it's going back to AAU ball, I knew who we were playing based on the way they dressed, the way guys looked, the styles. Well, in the age of social media, everything's the same now, and these high school guys could be in California and be in New York, and they could be best of buddies because they communicate via social media, and they want to play with each other because it's just a different.
I know. I'm old school, man. I don't see Bird or Jordan or Hey, what are you guys doing in the off season? You want to come and play with us?
It sucks because now you have top heavy leagues. That's just what it boils down to.
And I'll admit too, and I'm salty too because Porzingis went down. I'm like, now I'll tell you what though. Before I let you hold on, before I let you get out of here, forget about Porzingis and the Knicks. But how about St. John's all of a sudden? Uh-oh.
I mean, Chris Mullin. Listen, how about
that run?
When they beat Duke, I called a good friend of mine who's been on ESPN radio with me years ago, and one of my co-hosts. He's a big St. John's guy, and I told him, I said, "Is this a good win for St. John's?" And he's not a Mullin guy. He's like, "Man, it's a great win for us. It's a bad win for us." He said, "Because now it's going to buy Mullin time." Well, now
he's not a Mullin guy.
Like, you know what? he loved Mullen playing at St. John's, but he just wanted them to step out of pocket and go
I got
outside.
you. Not go with
kind of what we were doing here at Georgetown for a while.
Yeah,
but
that's
I
true.
understand why Pat's there, but at the end of the day, you have to give Mullen credit because that team was bad for a while.
I know they were.
They've turned the corner. They've hit a switch. I don't know if I say they turned the corner, but whatever they've done, they've hit a switch. And he's got a team that was losing games now winning games. And the irony is, same thing's happening down here in D.C. They just had a big win against Seton Hall that they weren't supposed to beat that team. So, I mean, maybe these former players are finding a way to keep their guys engaged throughout the whole season. And now St. John's come Big East tournament, that's going to be an interesting development now.
I'm getting tired of the NIT. All right.
Who you telling?
This is true. Or the Joe Lapchick tournament. All right. Maui Invitational to begin the year, where you just basically beat up the guys like Winthorpe's and whomever.
Hey, man, my Penn State Nittany Lions are actually turning the corner.
I saw that, too. I saw that.
We need a couple more 4 against 4 ranked teams. If you win 2 of those, you might be turning.
Might have a shot, so. All right, listen, always great stuff, pal. We'll talk to you next week. Always appreciate a couple moments.
I appreciate it, Q. Take care, man.
You got it, Lake Lewis. So good stuff from him.